afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Game Plan College information session with Colorado College. I'm here with Darius Partner, who's an Associate Director of Admissions at Colorado College, and he's going to share a little bit about his school today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will address those at the end of the session. So take it away, Darius.
Awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me this platform to be able to speak to you about Colorado College, especially during these tumultuous times that we're in. I was excited just because I do serve as the Assistant Director of Admission, which means I also am responsible for a territory. So I am the representative for the great state of North Carolina. When I'm able to, I travel there many times a year and speak about Colorado College. And so we're going to talk about a few things today during this information session. Keeping in mind, this is the information session that you would get if you were sitting on our campus in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The shot that you see currently, the background of this PowerPoint is actually Colorado Springs. So we're going to talk about Colorado Springs. We're going to talk about the location. We're going to talk about what it means to be at a liberal arts institution. We're going to talk about our infamous block plan, our curriculum that is unique to the world, and the fact that we just take one class at a time. And we're going to talk about the admission and admission processes, and then we're going to wrap up with financial aid as well as questions that you may have. But since I was late to the party, I will make sure to be respectful of your time, and we'll go ahead and get started. Liberal arts, right? Well, actually, before we start speaking about liberal arts specifically, I'll go ahead and talk about Colorado College. We are a small, private liberal arts institution in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is about an hour south of Denver. Get to Denver in about an hour. But the cool thing, this is Cutler Hall. So if you were on our campus here for a presentation, this is where my office is. This is the Office of Admission. This is the first stop usually on our campus. Established in 1876, we are an older institution. We were here before Colorado was even a state in 1878, so about 2 years. So we've been here for a long time, but we've always been a progressive institution. One of the few institutions in the United States, one of the first, that allowed women into the classroom way back then when it wasn't a common thing. So we're definitely progressive in that sense. We have 2,200 students on our campus. Again, hence the word small and a private liberal arts institution, where the average class size is about 16. Their classes won't get larger than 25. Campus is an urban setting, if you will. We're about 5 blocks or 8 to 10 minute walk from downtown Colorado Springs. This is our backyard. This is the view that I can actually see from my office. This is Pikes Peak, one of the country's most majestic mountains, if you will. We're a big outdoorsy town, outdoorsy state. Since 2012, Colorado, specifically Colorado Springs, has been repeatedly voted as one of the best places to live in the U.S., whether that be for location or whether that be for the climate. Geographical location. We get 4 true seasons, sometimes all in the same day. When I do recruit students from North Carolina, they often talk about this is one of the few times that they see snow or they've seen snow. It's up close and personal. And that specific amount of it. But it's cool because this is our backyard. This is our backdrop. So if you love to hike, if you love to ski, if you love to canoe, if you love to backpack, if you love to camp, if you love to go on walks and be around the mountains, Colorado College is in a prime location. I spoke about Denver. Denver is another great place to live. It's actually where I'm from. Metropolitan area, 3.5 million people. In Colorado Springs specifically, we have 750,000. So we're not as big or as populated as Denver, but still feels like a happening place, really. Denver's a great place for internships. Check out sports games, shop, go to concerts and music events. One of the best music venues is in the world, in my opinion, is right outside of Denver, and that's Red Rocks Amphitheater. Been to some of the best shows of my life, really, have been at Red Rock. So very unique area. I want to take a second and show you a map of institutions that share our same genetic makeup, right? That are very similar to us. On this map, you see institutions that are similar to us in the sense that they are small, they are private, they're liberal arts, and they are selective. And then feel free to turn on your mics if you'd like, since there's just a few of us on this call as students. What do you notice about this map? Any observations at all? Feel free to speak out.
There are less than 20 of them nationally.
Great point. Great point. Yes, there are not a lot of institutions like ourselves. Anything else that you want to add? Any other observations?
Looks like they're all in the Northeast.
Exactly. A large portion of small private liberal arts institutions are in the Northeast. And that goes back to colonial times when America was first born and institutions were being placed strategically. Another thing that you might notice is that they have a few on the West Coast, got one in Canada, but hey, this is us in Colorado, that yellow square there, if you can see my mouse, that's us. Essentially, we are the only small, private, liberal arts institution in the Rocky Mountain time zone. That means we are one of the few institutions in the country, if not the world, that have that amazing backdrop of Pikes Peak, that have 4 true seasons on the same day, that have the type of climate that we do, in our own time zone. So I can literally say that we essentially are in a league of our own. Now let's take a minute to talk about liberal arts. What does that mean? What can you expect here as a student in the classroom? What can you expect from your curriculum? Well, when it comes to liberal arts education, you're going to be well-rounded. Liberal arts means that you have the freedom to choose what you want to study, how you want to study it, in the manner in which you want to study. Keeping in mind that we have college requirements, right? So maybe you want to be a social science major. That's really popular here. Specifically, international political economy and economics are some of our most popular social science majors. And that's what you're interested in. Or what about the humanities, right? You'd love to be an Italian studies or music or an education or comparative literature major. Some of the majors that we have. Or maybe you're just a science person and you just love neuroscience. We're one of the few small liberal arts institutions that offer neuroscience as a major and not as a graduate type of study. Keeping in mind that chemistry, neuroscience, psychology are some of our most popular majors as well. But maybe that's what you choose to be you're an expert in, and you will, because we have an immersive type of experience here that we'll talk about. But what it means for a liberal arts education is that you'll be well-versed, not only in your major, whatever it is that you want to study, but you'll be able to talk to a bunch of different educational aspects. For example, in addition to your psychology major, you also have to take a math class in order to graduate. You have to take a science class. You have to take 2 blocks or 2 classes of language, foreign language, before you graduate. You have to take a comparative literature course. And you have to take classes on global health issues and diversity courses as well. So by the time you leave us in 4 years, and most of the time 9 out of 10 students leave and graduate in 4 years, you'll be not only an expert in your field, but be able to talk to a bunch of different things. You're going to be well-versed and well-rounded. And that's what you can expect at a liberal arts college. All right, our infamous block plan. Ooh. We're one of 3 institutions in the world, not the country, but the world, that operate on this block plan. But what is it? Well, those colorful blocks that you see on the screen are not just blocks, but they represent courses. At our institution, you take 1 class at a time for 3.5 weeks for 3 hours a day, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., Monday through Friday. After those 3 weeks are up, you get a 4.5-day break. After that 4.5-day break, you start a whole new class. You do this 4 times a semester, 8 times a year for 4 years, so you can graduate. It's us, a small private liberal arts institution, Cornell College in Iowa, and Quest College in Canada, that all operate on this system, but we've been doing it for the longest. Before I take a deep dive into the block plan, I want to give you a historical of perspective about the block plan. This upcoming year is going to be our 50th year on the block plan. We've been doing it for 50 years. Now we haven't perfected it by any means, but we've made some great tweaks to it, and students and faculty as well really love it. Keeping in mind that when students are taking one class at a time, your faculty members are taking one class at a time. So the conversation started 50 years ago in 1970. We all remember 1970, right? It was a great time. Woodstock, the Beatles, John Lennon, all that fun stuff. So we got together as an institution, faculty, administration, president, staff, and they started having conversation around student success. And their intentional conversation led to the fact that we're good at what we do. We've been doing school since the 1800s. We have a great alumni network. Students love to come back after they graduate and support campus, and students are graduating and getting good jobs. We're doing a great job of what we're doing, but how do we go from good to great, or great to the best? How do we do that? How do we change up our academic curriculum to really maximize student learning? And so one sociology teacher raised his hand in a packed room and said, I have an idea. What if, instead of taking 6 classes a semester, multiple classes during the week, how about we take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks, for 3 hours a day? And it'll be an immersive study. And for those 3.5 weeks, we'll put a semester's worth of academic thought into one class. So think about what you do from August to December in one class. We're gonna squeeze that thought, that class into 3.5 weeks. And then once the 3.5 weeks are up, we'll give them a great break. 4.5 days of freedom to do whatever they want to do. They'll come back after the 4.5 days are up, and they'll start a whole new class. But the idea is that they're focusing in on one course, not 6. And that brings us to today. We are here now on the block plan, and students absolutely love it. A few things about the block plan is that it sounds like it could be easier than taking 6 classes at a time, because most high school seniors are doing that currently. High school juniors, high school students, period. You got your 7 classes, you're up early in the morning at 7 o'clock, you're done usually by 3 o'clock, and that's not including extracurricular activities. You'll go home, you'll study for a few hours. During finals week, you'll have about 5 or 6 finals that you have to really cram for and study for. And we've all been there when I have tougher classes that I'm going to spend more time on, and then not as tough classes where I don't have to spend as much time on. Our students don't have to make those type of decisions. They don't have to sacrifice, right? They don't have to bargain, in a sense. You can give your all to one class for 3.5 weeks. And it's almost like every single month you get that 4.5 day break that we'll talk about here in a second. So what does it look like? Well, keeping in mind, you're only going to have about 15 to 16 students in your class. And it's not like you typically see on TV where it's a lecture style, where it's a large lecture room and you have a teacher at the bottom of the lecture room talking at the class. It's much different here at CC. So you'll see in the background, you could have class outside with 12 of you. And most of the time, your classes are going to be a round table discussion more than anything. Debates, creative arguments, interpretations of what it is that you're studying. So now it seems more that your professor is a colleague or a fellow classmate than actually a professor, even though they are the expert in the room. The smallest class I've ever seen at Colorado College had 1 person in it, and it was an Asian studies class. Could you imagine you and your professor, just you two, for 3.5 weeks? Talk about awkward, right? But at the same time, you have access to your professor, infinite access. I've seen classes as small as 5, as small as 6 on our campus. So back to the timing, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. To me, that's an optimal time. I can speak from experience that 7 a.m. Darius, that's a completely different person than the 9 a.m. Darius. 9 a.m. Darius loves people. He's rested. He is happy, go lucky, ready to learn. 7 a.m. Darius is a little more quiet and tends to drink coffee by the gallon. So it tends to be a very conducive time to study. You're done at 12 noon. Everyone breaks for lunch. Everyone has lunch at the same time. So essentially, you have the rest of your day to do whatever it is that defines you as a student and more. For me, after class, after 12, I'd eat a great lunch and I'd take a nap, like an amazing nap where you don't have to set an alarm. You just wake up when you wake up. Because in between all of our classes is 21 hours in theory, unless you have like a lab, which usually takes place in the afternoon or the evening. But after 12 p.m., you break for lunch and you don't have to report to class again until 9 a.m. the very next day. 21 hours, which essentially means you're going to have about your 5 or 6 hours of homework. You're going to have your lunch time. You're going to have dinner. But it also leaves you time to go to the recreation center and go work out. You can go for a hike, go for a jog in the afternoon because you don't have anything tying you up in the afternoons academics wise. Also considering even though the block plan seems seemingly unique, it still runs on a time frame that we've come to know and love and become comfortable with. Your blocks 1 through 4, that's first semester, with block 1 usually starting late August and block 4 ending early December. Blocks 5 through 8 is second semester, with block 5 usually starting mid to late January, and then block 8 ending in May. It's intense. The block plan is intense. It's great that you get to hone in and focus on one class, but the fact that we put a semester's worth of academic content and squeeze it into 3.5 weeks makes it challenging. So that's why there's certain classes where you can have 100 pages of reading in a night to be able to discuss the very next day with your classmates and professor. I've seen some classes where the class is only 3 weeks, but every week you have an essay due. I've seen some classes that have spent 10 days at the Mexican-American border near El Paso, Texas, where they've looked at specific immigration policy and have talked to policymakers and have talked to ICE and have talked to immigrants and come back to campus for 3 days. They submit 2 papers and the class is over. Education here is in a curriculum is completely unique and you won't find anything else like it in the world. I want to talk a little bit on that point about talking about studying outside of the classroom. First and foremost, remember those block breaks I talked about? Cool, so I'm gonna break down a typical block for you. The first week, we call it first week of the block. It's Monday through Friday. The second week, we call it second week, Monday through Friday. You have the third week, Monday through Friday. On that fourth week, the class goes Monday to Wednesday at noon. Once noon hits on that fourth Wednesday of the block, you turn in your final paper, you have your final discussion, you take your final test, whatever it is that wraps up that class, and boom, you're out, you're free. Kiss your classmates and your professors goodbye. It's sayonara, I'll see you in 4.5 days. And we call it a protected break. What do you guys think I mean by protected?
They can't have any other assignments due.
Correct. Your professors will not, are not allowed to give you any type of academic preparatory materials for the sake of the next upcoming class. They can't do it. And to be honest, I don't think our professors want to do it either because they really enjoyed the block breaks. Think about it. Every month you get a week off from school. What would you do if you had 4.5 days off in Colorado Springs, Colorado? Well, block breaks, to give you an idea, students do service trips, get out into the hills and do outdoor and other projects because our students care about the environment. They'll go snowshoeing in Ridgway, Colorado. They'll go biking near Grand Junction, which is about 4.5 hours away driving. So they're biking it, folks. They're rock climbing. And they're camping and backpacking in close by Moab, Utah. Whatever it is that you do to rejuvenate yourself, to relax, to recuperate, we say take the block break and do that. Maximize your time. Me, I was more of a lock myself in my room for 4.5 days and sleep because I just had a killer calculus class. or the last block really killed me, or I just really love sleep, and that's how I rejuvenate myself. Whatever it is that you do to rest and relax, we say do that on the block break, and you have that opportunity essentially every 3 weeks, every 3.5 weeks. I want to take a minute to talk about studying outside of the classroom. Studying outside of the classroom is completely unique at Colorado. Now, yes, we do have those typical study abroad opportunities where you can study all around the world for either a semester or a year, which is pretty common in the study abroad world. However, maybe you want to do a block abroad. We have a saying that 100% of our students will in some way, shape, or form step off of our campus for the sake of studying in academia. Students figure, a lot of our students, I'd probably say close to 80%, realize that they don't want to go away and leave our campus and leave the block plan for a year, right? Or for 9 months, or for 16 weeks, which is a semester. However, they figure that going abroad for 3.5 weeks to Argentina to take a dance class is a perfect amount of time. They figure going to Mongolia, living out in a tent for 3.5 weeks is the perfect amount of time. Or what if I told you that for 3.5 weeks, you could be on a boat in the Mediterranean Sea, reading the Odyssey, the book The Odyssey, following the same path as the main character Odysseus takes in the book? What if I told you that the class wraps up with you standing on the shore of Greece, reading the final pages of the Odyssey, closing the book, reflecting on what you read, going on a 3 or 4.5 day tour of Greece, coming back to campus, still getting your block break, and then you slide into your chemistry class like nothing happened? It's completely common here on our campus for students to be here 1 month and in Italy or Greece or Montreal the very next. We encourage students to get off of our campus, to go to a different part of the world and study, because we know what it has, we know the effects that it has on the students and their development. Maybe you're a little hesitant to do the study abroad opportunities. Well, we have amazing opportunities here at home as well. Again, remembering 100% of our students in some way, shape, or form will step off of our campus for the sake of studying. What if I told you that you can go to Los Angeles as a film studies major, or a film studies enthusiast and you just want to take the class? What if I told you that you live in Hollywood in an apartment complex right behind Warner Brothers Studios, and you work with Warner Brothers Studios? You work with actors, directors, producers, writers, and you get to work on actual real content. 2 years ago, our students had the opportunity to go to Hollywood because the class's name is on location in Hollywood, and they got an opportunity to work on the show Young Sheldon, which we see on TV every day. It's this immersive, hands-on type of experience that students are after. I'll conclude with this, an analogy, if you will, when it comes to the block plan. Best way to describe it is scuba diving versus snorkeling. At your typical university, you have to take 6 classes, right, over a semester schedule. You can't really get deep into all of your classes as you don't have the time, or maybe you don't dedicate the brain capacity, right? So you're not able to get deep into what you're learning. Scuba, it's snorkeling, it's all surface level. Well, at Colorado College, we like to liken it to scuba diving, where you have this big tank on your back, you have this big wetsuit on, the goggles, the breathing oxygen, and you're able to take a deep dive into film studies, into psychology. We have a class called Black Music Matters, where they're actually going on a tour in the southeastern part of the United States and going to specific museums that host Black music. It's a unique experience, again, unlike any other. Okay, I want to talk about the admission process really quickly. We are, like I said, a selective liberal arts institution. What that means in my eyes is that we promise to look at all students from a holistic standpoint, through a holistic lens, which means every box that you see on the screen here goes into consideration when we look at you as an applicant. You are not just a number to us. You're not just a GPA and a test score that meet at a sweet spot on a grid and boom, you're admitted. And nor should you be. You are so much more. You are writers. You are people who are engaged in activities. You are people who desire to interview with us. You are scholars and so much more. So what do we look for? What is the application process here? What is the admission process? Well, first things first, when you submit your application, the meat of your application, probably the single most important thing is your transcript. We're going to be looking obviously at your grades. Being here that it is selective, we want to obviously see great grades. But on top of that, we want to see great grades with rigor. And when I say rigor, I mean, are you challenging yourself to the full extent of the environment in which you come from? So if you have the opportunity to take AP courses, are you taking them? If you have access to international baccalaureate classes or IB classes, are you taking them? Are you challenging yourself? If you have the opportunity to do dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment, are you doing that? Why? Why do I say that? Why is it important? Well, remember folks, the block plan ain't no joke. 3 essays in 3 weeks, 100 pages of reading, challenging content for you to critically think about and digest. We figure the students who come in best prepared are the ones that have challenged themselves the most. But please don't think that you'll be penalized by any means if you don't have access or did not challenge yourself. We just figure the students on our campus fare the best or are able to rise to the challenge, if you will. We want to see positive grade trends. We want to see great grades. We want to see great grades over 4 years. Next, we have test optional. You're going to be some of the first students, first groups of students to apply to Colorado College under the test optional policy. Now, what does that mean? Test optional essentially means it's exactly what it sounds like. You have the option to submit your test or not. AKA, you have the power to decide whether or not you want to submit your ACT or SAT test. In that, always a good rule of thumb is to check on universities, like what's their average score. I try not to get in the business of advising students whether they submit their scores or not, because no one knows you and your academic capabilities like you. Good rule of thumb is if you feel like your test score is a true representation of who you are as a student, then absolutely submit it. Heck yeah, that 1310, that 1350, that's me. That's who I am. Feel free to submit it, knowing that if you do not submit your test, you will not be penalized for it. Again, the option is totally up to you. Writing is important. Not only when you're applying to Colorado College, but when you're admitted to Colorado College, as writing will be the main medium in which you communicate to your professors that you understand the content in which they are teaching. We value writing so much that in addition to your personal essay, and yes, please make it about you, make it personal, we require 2 additional essay questions through the Common App. First question is, why Colorado College? Why us? Essentially, we want to make sure that you understand who you are applying to, but we want to gauge your affinity. We want students who want us as well. Second question, design your own block. Design your own 3.5-week course. This is your opportunity to show us your creativity, your creative side, the innovative side of you. Be unique, be creative, and please don't submit a class to us that you think is interesting that we already have. I saw a lot of that this past application cycle. Probably the most memorable essay from this past year was a student that took the class was called The Exploration of Mars. They had guest speakers like Buzz Aldrin and the head of NASA come and speak to their class. Super cool. They watched movies in the class. They like Martian, which I thought was super cool as well. They actually went to Mars and took a field study block abroad trip. So it was super unique, great structured. The more detailed, the better. Writing is important. Activities. You want to know what it is that makes you outside of the world of academia. Are you a basketball player? Are you the president of the Key Club or the Environmental Sustainability Club? Are you class president? Are you part of National Honor Society? Are you a, oh gosh, National Honor Society scholar, AP scholar, whatever it is that makes you who you are outside of the classroom, please share it with us. For me, I wasn't able to engage in a lot of the extracurricular activities because my parents worked and I was the eldest sibling. And so when I put on my college essay is that when my parents are home, I essentially run the household. I take care of my siblings. I make sure that they're fed and they have help for their homework. And for me, that was my reality. So please don't feel like you have to have this cookie cutter type of activity list on the Common App, that you're the president of this club and volunteered here, because that's not everyone's reality. But if it is your reality, we encourage you to share that because we want to get to know you. Again, this opportunity is designed for us to view you as more than a number because you're so much more. And your letters of rec, we require 2 letters of recommendation. We ask that they come from the 5 core subjects. The 5 core subjects are math, science, social science, English, and language. Now, one thing I want to back up and mention about the academics, I'm not looking at your GPA, your overall GPA. I'm not going to look at it. We don't care in a sense. We actually, when we take your transcript, we calculate our own internal GPA from the 5 core subjects or the meat of your transcript. Math, science, social science, English, and language. When it comes to those letters of recommendation, we want to hear from one of those 5 core subjects. We want to hear from a professor that teaches you in that. Why? Because they can speak to your academic aptitude. This past year, I read a letter of recommendation coming from a student from her AP Calc teacher. And it started off very interesting in saying that, hey, I'm Kaylee's math teacher, AP Calculus. I just want to start off by saying Kaylee was not a math person when she first got here. I was surprised to see her on the first day of school. But she answered the bell. She spent extra time with me. She actually grew over the semester to be one of my top scholars in the class. So heck yeah, she can do the work at Colorado College because she tackled the calculus class, much I've seen her tackle a bunch of other educational obstacles. Heck yeah, she could be on the block plan. I give her my stamp of approval. That's what we're looking for when we have letters of recommendation from your professors. You'll see down there that you have the opportunity to interview at our institution. It's recommended, but it's not required. And what's cool is that if we are able to travel over the next year and I have opportunity to come to North Carolina, you have the opportunity to interview with me on your neck of the woods, on your turf, if you will. But if you come to campus, you'll have the opportunity to interview with fellows, which is essentially a CC senior, whose main mission is to interview prospective students. So you'll get an opportunity to be interviewed by a current Colorado College Tiger. I encourage you to do this because the interviews give us a great opportunity to view you outside of the quantitative data of your application, right? Outside of the writing, outside of the test scores, outside of the GPA. We're also going to hear from your college counselor, and they're gonna evaluate you in a sense. They're going to talk about your rigor of your academic curriculum. They're going to say what kind of student you were inside of the classroom. They're going to describe you in a few terms. So we're going to hear from multiple people about you as a student. A few stats and deadlines I want to cover here. This is older information. I actually just got our most recent information. This past year, we had 10,254 applications come through our doors, the most we've ever had. Of those 10,254, we told 1,200 students that you are admitted and accepted to Colorado College. Of those 1,200, 570 said, yes, I'm coming, which gave us a 13.6 acceptance rate, pretty similar to years past. You'll see on the right side of the screen that these are our ACT and SAT test scores. These are our averages, excuse me. You'll see a 32 is pretty average, pretty normal for what we get for ACT, and a 1,400 is what we get on average for SAT. Now, maybe you're like me, and for me, I wasn't the strongest test taker, so I think I would have been a great benefactor of not submitting a test, just because I was so much stronger outside of my test in my own academic curriculum. Good rule of thumb is if you're anywhere within the neighborhood of our test scores of 32 and 1,400, it's safe to say you should submit your scores because it will be seen as competitive. I want to talk really quickly about decision plans. We have multiple decision rounds. Deadlines for Colorado College are super important. Early decision, early action, and regular action. Early decision is a legally binding agreement, which says when you apply to us and communicate that your application is under the early decision distinction, if admitted, you are obligated, contractually obligated, to attend Colorado College and pay whatever it is that you're going to pay, whatever your student bill is. You have to come. And you can only apply to one institution under the early decision distinction. Two sides of this can be a little scary because you're essentially putting all your eggs in one basket. But the other side of it is that it's the highest form of affinity for us, basically saying that we are your dream school. I would only apply under the early decision distinction if we are your number one top choice. It's binding. We also have early action, which is non-binding. And a great way to describe the difference. My mom broke this down to me this way. She said, Darius, I said, Janet, she said, Darius, I'm serious. When you're looking at decision plans, you really need to understand them because they are important, not only to you, but to admission officers. She tells me, Darius, early decision is like marriage. I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be weird. I was like 17 at the time. She's like, no, I'm serious. It's like marriage. When you apply early decision, it's like you're getting down on one knee. You're looking at Colorado College in the eye and saying, I love you for better or for worse. For 4 years, do we part? Versus early action, which is more like dating or flirting, if you will. You find a bunch of other institutions really admirable, really attractive, and you'd be fine getting into any one of them in a sense. But we're still in your top 3 or top 4 is when I would apply early action. There's no difference between early decision 1, early decision 2, other than the deadline. Both are legally binding, but early decision is maybe for that student that's taking 5 AP classes in their senior year, and they want the admission officers to see how they fared in those classes. Or maybe you really want to get close to that 1400, and so you retake the test in October of your senior year or September, knowing that you won't get your test scores back in time, so you wait till January 15th. And then we have regular action as well, which is our final deadline. Cool. I want to take the last few minutes, as I want to be respectful of your time, to mention financial aid. First of all, merit-based aid. Grade or funding that you receive based on your merit. Do we have it? Yes. Do we have a lot of it? No. We have students, the majority of our class has great merit to them as applicants, right? 1400 ACT, 4.1 GPA, president of this club, recommended by this alumni. And so we couldn't possibly, we couldn't fiscally support every student that comes through our doors that meets merit like other institutions would. So how do we combat that? Need-based aid. We're one of 66 institutions in the United States that meet full demonstrated need. What does that mean? That means you're going to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile, 2 financial aid applications. From that, we get your expected family contribution, your EFC, your strength and ability to pay. We cost this past year $75,000. Maybe what you can contribute is $10,000. That means if you are admitted to Colorado College, meeting full need means that we come up with the other $65,000. How do we do that? Most of it is through grants, money that we give to students that they don't have to pay back. Essentially, we give it to you to go and change the world through your education. Small percentage of that is loans, as well as work study. You work for the institution in some student capacity. We pay you with funds that we'd hope that you'd use that for your educational endeavors. I've seen this past year students, the average loan that students were getting was about $42,000 that students were getting out of the $75,000 that it cost. So that's a little bit about financial aid. That concludes my presentation. I would like to open this time up to questions. I think I saw a few in the chat. I'd like to rattle these off as I want to be also respectful to your time. Heyo. Great questions. So the first question, do the block break trips come with additional cost? Good question. So great question. It depends on what you want to do. You can have block break trips that are, the block breaks are that 4.5 days where you're free to essentially do whatever you want to do. Outside of the academic world in a sense. So if you want to go and hang out on your own in Denver or go hike, it's completely free, right? If you're doing things on your own accord. But if you're doing activities with Colorado College, maybe you're a skier or a snowboarder, right? Or you want to go on our infamous ski and soak trip, where you go ski for half a day and then soak for the other half a day and then come back to campus. There is a charge to that, but the charges are pretty minimal. A lot of the activities on our campus that take you off of campus are really affordable in a sense. I've seen this where you can get discounted lift and ski tickets, and you can get transportation to the mountains for very cheap. $5 for a bus ride to the mountain and back outside of the ski and lift trip. So there's fantastic opportunities to engage in that. What are the student demographics? If the student wants to submit their test scores, will self-reported scores be accepted? Yes, great question. So I answer the students want to submit their test scores. So we do accept self-reported scores during the year. However, when it comes to about June, July, if you're accepted, we're going to need the actual score. So we'll take your self-reported score initially, but we're just going to have to double check and make sure on behalf of College Board, ACT, SAT, that's what the score was. So great question. The student demographics. So great question. We have 49 different states represented. We missed out this year on a student from South Dakota who decided not to come, or else all 50 states would have been represented. We have 58 countries represented on our campus. I just actually got the number from our incoming class. So the group of freshmen that are currently getting ready to come to Colorado College, 30% of them identify as students of color, 3 out of 10. Out of the general class, 17% are Pell eligible. That's some of the highest numbers that we've had thus far. And about 21% are Colorado students here locally. As a whole, we're probably sitting at just a little more than 25%. Last I checked, it was 26% students of color, which leaves a little more than 70% of students that identify as white. Great question. Does Colorado College offer financial aid to DACA and undocumented students? Yes, we do. I believe in this upcoming class, I believe we have 3, and we met their full need, which essentially saying that we paid $75,000 for that student to come on our campus. But we do offer financial aid to DACA, undocumented, as well as international students as well. We offer our financial aid to all of our students. Great question. Are there other questions that I can help shed light to? So great questions. How did you support students in the wake of COVID-19? Great question. So we got students off of campus well before cases were prevalent in Colorado. We wanted to be proactive, and we sent them home for spring break this past year, and obviously they haven't been back since. Some students were actually not able to get themselves back home as they didn't have the funds. So Colorado College shelled out about $3 million to help students get back home, wherever that was in the world. However, we allowed them to stay on campus if their home was in a dangerous place. So students who are from Washington, who are from New York, are still on our campus, as we did not think it was ethical nor wise to send them back in those areas unless they communicated to us that they had safe boarding in somewhere in the state. Also, our seniors this year didn't get a chance to have commencement. And so we sent them home for spring break and haven't been back since. So our university committed to flying all the graduates and their families back to campus 2021 for a actual graduation celebration, as we believe that all of our students should have that. We provided a lot of students with Wi-Fi as if they went back home and their setup was less than ideal as far as tech capabilities to be able to still engage in the classroom setting as we went online. We were able to help students with setting up with internet as well. So that's a few things that we helped with students in the wake of COVID. Our most popular majors, economics, biology, international political economy is really popular, as well as psychology. Our most unique majors, I would probably say, where is it at here? Super unique. Southwest Studies is pretty unique. I think it's in humanities. We have a film and media studies program, which I wouldn't say is as unique, but you can major in Russian, the Romance language, Spanish and French, or Spanish and Italian. It's pretty cool. RIMS, I believe it is migration studies as a major as well. And so they get pretty unique. Those are also the most popular ones as well. And you guys asked some great questions. Other questions? Or can I bring clarity to other questions that you asked? Good question. Why would CC be a good choice for a student from Durham, North Carolina? That was a very great question. CC is definitely a niche school, I would say. If you are a student who think you would benefit from taking one class at a time, but also if you think that you are a student who would thrive on a small campus with 2,000 students, with an immersive type of study, if you think that you would benefit from having small classes, but also having multiple opportunities to study all over the world, Colorado College would be for you. We are well-resourced. We are well-endowed. Our students have amazing privileges top to bottom, inside and outside of the classroom. I think it's a great institution where our professors are top 5 in the world as far as being able to teach, but also being experts in their field, as everyone has a PhD. We have a robust alumni network. So you have opportunities as a sophomore and even a freshman when you first step on our campus to talk to other students who have already graduated, who are in their fields like Google and Tesla and Boeing and Facebook, students that are employed there, people who are employed there who are former students. You have access to those students and opportunities to talk to those students and engage with those people and say, hey, how do I get an internship? What was your path like? How did you fare at Colorado College? And just amazing opportunities. You're gonna meet amazing people here. Oprah did our commencement last year, which was pretty exciting to have Oprah come and talk to seniors. But Colorado College is a thriving place right now in the wake of uncertainty in higher education. I can say that we're sturdy. We are durable. We are stable. And I think students really need that during these times. But Colorado College is a very unique place in a sense where you can be on campus one month and Italy the next month, all just taking one class at a time. I would say for not just students from Durham, but students in general, and the fact that if you really want to learn, if you really want to take a deep dive into what it is that you're studying, an immersive experience, and be hands-on, being able to literally reach out and touch what it is that you're studying, CC is a place for you. But also, if you're looking for snow, we got you covered, or any type of cold weather, because I've been in North Carolina and it's warm. It's warm to say the least. Great question. Other questions?
So I think we're about at time. So while we give people chances to ask
Goodness,
final questions.
Awesome. Yes, please.
just a reminder to everyone that if you would like to be in the running for a $20 gift certificate, please fill out our survey that I just posted in the chat. Darius, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat.
Absolutely.
So that people can email you if they have questions.
Please. I'm also hosting territory rep meetings, so you can email me about that, and I can get you registered, where it's just me and you, and we just talk for 30 minutes about things that you're wondering about. For me, it could be anything from college essays to application processes to, hey, let's talk more in depth about specific things that you're interested in Colorado College. I'm available for that as well.
All right, it looks like no one else has questions, so thank you so much for sharing about Colorado College today, Darius. We really appreciate it.
Of course. I hope it was informative. I hope it was helpful and just gives you